Alright, hello everyone. So tonight we're gonna be doing 7th chords on guitar and chord extensions, and we're gonna try to clarify any confusion you guys might have. Again, if you already know this stuff, I apologize, but some people don't. So let's get right into it, and we'll talk about 7th chords and triads and extensions, and we'll talk about 9ths, 11ths, and 13ths, and how really it's the exact same thing as a second, a fourth, and a sixth. It's just up an octave, so they call it that. Because sometimes it could be a little weird. You'll hear like someone say like, "Oh, you play like a C sharp 4 chord or something, or a C sharp 11 or something like that," and then you're just like, what the hell is he talking about? So we'll hopefully try to clear some of that stuff up. It's actually funny, I haven't played that chord in probably like years. But okay, so I'm in standard tuning tonight, so I won't torture you with the down tuning. So we'll just first cover 7th chord. So let's take C chord, right? All white keys on the piano, which is easy enough. And basically the notes are C, E, G, C, right? So that's the basic triad, just C, E, G, and then a C on top. So the 7th chord refers to the 7th of the scale. So the 7th of the scale in this case is B. Right, we get a little whammy bar action. So that would be called C major 7 because it's a 7th note. In that case, it's the open B string. Right? So that's all that means. So if that's a 7, then this C on top is the octave. That's 8, which means this would be 9, or C add 9. But really, it's just the second on top, up an octave. That's why they call it 9, right? So it's like no one calls this C10. You would just think of it, which is why some of these the nomenclature of it is kind of stupid. But what you do need to know is you do need to know that that's a second up top, and that's a third up top, that's a fourth up top, and that's a fifth up top. You do need to know the intervals. I know sometimes in these lesson videos I'm pretty lenient, and I was like, well, you don't really have to know that. You just have to know how it works. But in this case, all you have to know is the intervals. So you need to know if that's C to D is a major second, major third, perfect fourth, perfect fifth, major 6, major 7, there's your octave, there's your major second up an octave, so you call it a 9th, there's your 9th, there's your 10th, there's your 11th, there's your 12th, there's your 13th, and there's your 14th, right? And so that's another thing, is like you often hear a lot of people talk about 11ths and 13ths and 9ths, but you don't hear people talk about 14ths and stuff like that, which is why I think it's sort of just, it's just like an extra thing your brain has to do. What you need to just think of it as is just the interval up an octave. So that 14th, it's just a major 7, right? And then that's 2 octaves right there. So the best thing you could do is go to like musictheory.net and do like an interval ear training thing, because you have to learn all your intervals. That's a must if you want to get better at guitar or whatever. You gotta learn all your intervals. So just a little basic C chord. Now this is voiced 1 3 5 8 or 1 3 5 7. Now you might hear stuff like flat 7 or dominant 7, right? Right? That's instead of B, you have B flat. And then you could do other stuff. You could add the ninth, which I never like that chord out of context never really struck me as anything particularly good, unless it was on like piano or something, and that would be another story. Unless you like, if you had the 6 on top or the 13th, then it sounds like kind of something cool. But anyway, so that's just voice, root, 3rd, 5th, octave. So here's where a lot of guitar players get confused too. The voicing of the chord. So basically, in a nutshell, all you have to remember with the subject is more or less there's just like basically 2 main voicings. The one I just showed you, which is 1, 3, 5, 7, or whatever if it was the 7th chord. And then there's the voicing when you start with a 5th. So, or the power chord, which you guys obviously all know. So that's root, 5th, there's my 7th, there's my 3rd or my 10th. So I could get a 7th chord like that, which Alan Holdsworth would describe as kind of primitive sounding. He'd be like, this one sounds a lot better, but we'll get to that one in a second. So you can have that 7th chord, right? Those are the same chord. They have the same notes, just one starts root, 5th, 7th, 10th, or 3rd on top, whatever you want. So that's that. And then if you wanted the flat 7, there's your C7. And basically a good tip or trick to remember is that one always wants to be resolved a 5th down, in a nutshell. I mean, you could resolve these other ways, but from like Theory 101, right? You can hear that resolution. You can hear this note. The 3rd is going up to F. That B flat's going down to A, right? And actually, that will come into play later when you're figuring out tricks to remember how these intervals sound, which would probably be maybe a video for another day. Actually, I probably should have made that video first, the intervals, but whatever. Probably a lot of you know the intervals already, so it's all good. All right, so that's the 7th chord. Root, 5th, 7. You get some weird ones, like if you move this up a 4th. This is one I never use, just because it just sounds like a little too dissonant. It's just a little sort of weird sounding. This one's kind of a cool one though. If you go down, right? If you go down from the 3rd, this is a cool harmony, and this is what's known as like a slash chord, but it's sort of interesting because you could probably think of it as 2 things. So this would be known as like a G chord with C in the bass, but then you could also just think about it as root, 5th, 7th, 9 in C. So you could think about that one 2 ways. You could think about it like as like a G with like a weird sort of C in the bass, which is a non-chord tone of G, right? Because G is just G, B, D. There's no C in the chord. Or you can think about it like I just said, like root, 5th, 7, 9. So that's that. Now there's some other 7th chords, right? Because you got the major 7, you got dominant 7, and actually it's good to learn them in this order. Then if you flat the 3, you have the minor 7, the minor 7 chord. And what's interesting about that one, actually, just to digress a sec, that one can also resolve the 5th down, but it would resolve the 5th down dominant. And again, so that would be like 2, 5. And then we'll get into all the all the different things you can do or whatever. So So that's the minor 7th chord, where you just, it's basically the dominant 7th, but then you just lower the 3rd down. And again, notice I'm calling it the 3rd because that's what it is. Right? And again, that's where some of this stuff gets into play, because you never hear people talk about a flat 10 ever. I've never heard anyone refer to it as a flat 10. So that's why you should just refer to it in simplest terms. Okay. So that's root 5th, got my minor 7th interval, and now I got my minor 3rd interval on top. Alright, next in line is if we lower the 5th. Like that. So now that one is referred to as 2 names. In the jazz world, it's called a minor 7 flat 5, for the reason why I just told you. It's a minor, got the minor 7, and got that tritone. And same deal, this one will again resolve the 5th down. I just made a suspended 4th. But now, because of that one, when it resolves to 1, the 1 is gonna be like a minor flavor. So before the dominant, that 1 is a major flavor. But now if you have the minor 7 flat 5, it's resolving to the minor 1. So that's minor 7 flat 5. We're gonna have to cut this video, it's already way too long. So then there's one more, traditionally there's one more, and that's the, it's called fully diminished 7th, and basically you're just lowering, you guessed it, the 7th now. You're lowering that minor 7th here. So on paper it would be a double flatted 7, but the actual interval is a major 6. And again, don't get too caught up in that, because the 2 things I just said, double flat 7 and major 6, is kind of confusing. Just take it for what it is. It's just a diminished chord. And what's cool about the diminished chord is you could move it up in minor 3rds because it's all symmetrical. So if you ever hear anything crazy like Dream Theater doing, it's just sort of a little trick they're doing. And what's important is your experience with the chord, is like what it makes you think or feel. So, you know, the diminished is this sort of like chaotic, sort of like a very like chaotic sound. So that's that. I mean, we could talk a little bit more here. This is alright. So now we're over 13 minutes. So this is like the extra credit part of the lesson. This is for the real go-getters out there. So I probably should have also said that's just a regular bar chord too. Root 5th octave 3rd. So you could have the 4th on top, or you know, 11th, but just think about it as a 4th, and that would just be called sus4, right? I could have my G on top. Now, here's something interesting. I could try to invert this chord. Let's see. So now basically we could do, see, that's G, so now I'm going to need that to go to a C. Let's see, I had this, I could do that, right, because then I have the fourth, the fifth, the root, and the fifth. So I have a double fifth there. The other thing I was gonna do was this one, where like if I had a double fourth, I would then have, this is the fourth, that's the root, fourth root. Here's the double fourth. You can almost not even tell the difference. But again, that's just the suspended fourth. Again, that's the fourth on top. If I put it on the bottom, right, same from this voicing, it's almost kind of a nice, maybe a richer sound. Now, what's interesting about that is if I put the fourth on the bottom, is you could think about it as the C sus fourth with F on the bottom, but then really just becomes F sus 2. And how I'm thinking about that is I got F, C, F, so I just got root fifth octave. There's G, F, G, second. So if I skip that G string, put it on top, you know, technically it's the ninth, the ninth on top, but whatever. So basically, C sus 4 is sort of like an inversion of F sus 2. So they're like very closely related in that sense. And same deal with here. Is I might just call that F sus 2, because then I just have F. There's the second. There's the fifth, and there's the sus 2 right there. So that's that. You know, if you want some other stuff to take home with you, good exercise. Just go through them diatonically, which just means like by scale tone. So there's C major 7. There's D minor 7. Here's E minor 7. I could get F major 7 with the open E on top, or you could do it like that. And again, you can invert all of these. Maybe topic for another day. Alright, so C, D minor, E minor 7, F major 7. We could have a G7. Here's your G7. A minor 7. And this would be the B half diminished, or B minor 7 flat 5. And then just one again. So again, you can play these like up the neck, different ways. F major 7, G7, A minor 7. That's the same one as that one. Just like that. So it's a good thing to sort of understand. That's another good thing, is like there's a Joe Satriani lesson, and he basically, it's something like this, but he says like go through, like if you're playing a C major 7, go from the lowest note to the highest note on guitar. So then it would basically E, G, B, C, E, G. Let's see, because we're going all the way up. There's your B, C. Let's see. So So that's sort of a good thing to know, because then you can just see it, you know, you can sort of visualize it more on the fretboard. So we've broken 20 minutes, so we just gotta stop. So make sure to subscribe if you're new, and I have a Patreon, but if you wanted to throw a couple dollars, or it's all good if you don't though. So yeah, hope this enlightens some of you. All right, see you guys.